I actually has started reading Antoinette's her newly minted book. When was it published exactly?
August.
August. So yeah, it's just off the shelf. So great. So if you're looking for some winter reading or over the break, you got something there. And I'd like to talk about my favorite psychoanalyst, C.G. Jung. And can you guys see the pictures? I can't see what's going on, so I'm hoping you guys can see that image of the Bollinger Tower there on the Lake of Zurich.
If we're still doing multiple screen sharing, then there's a tab with my name and a tab with your name.
Ah, okay. Yeah, then I'm sure I can go back to yours.
Okay.
Um, where is it? Are you actively sharing?
Yes.
I see screens. Hmm. I've seen that before. I don't see it right now. Show meeting. Okay, we're getting closer. I see
Chat is
mine.
alive.
I see it.
It says, yes, I can see Mr. Sita.
Okay, I could see my screen and then there we go. And then I can see your screen.
Okay, good. So you can see my slide, Oscar?
I can see it. Can you
Super.
guys see it? It says your voices
Okay.
is your power.
Yes. Maria says I can see both screens just in different tabs. Perfect.
Yeah, so you guys can
Okay.
go back and forth. I'll stop sharing.
You sure?
So to kick this story off, Jung developed a technique for working with patients that he called um, amplification and active imagination. And what he would do was basically try to develop a dialogue with your unconscious mind or your shadow self or different aspects of yourself in contrast to your own ego personality. And what that allowed you to do is kind of get to know yourself, why you did things you didn't, um, you don't want to do, what's holding you back, what kind of anxieties that keep you from, you know, uh, fulfilling your goals, or even uh, maybe nervous habits that you have, like compulsive habits, washing your hands too much and things like that. And he found it really useful. And he'd really developed the technique when he was a child, or from his himself as a child. When he was a small boy, he would play with stones. He grew up in Zurich, and he's from there and taught and practiced there. And he would build little stone cities out of these rocks from the lake that he would build in little tiny houses and castles. And when he grew up, he built a big house. He's like, I'm a big boy now. I'm going to build big things. So he built the Bollinger Tower, which is what you were looking at, the overview of there. And he would carve the stones himself. Of course, he had help. He was an older guy already, but he did a lot of the carving himself and in the construction. He participated in that. And he found that that really unlocked his imagination. And in speaking to this technique, I want to read to you a quote from Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And it says, I can imagine someone using this technique, not for to heal some illness, but out of a kind of holy inquisitiveness, some youth perhaps, who would like to set his wings to his feet, not because of lameness, because he yearns for the sun. And of course, there's an image there of Prometheus holding the Olympian fire. And I thought that was an apt thought as Antoinette starts her presentation. So thank you for that. I will close my screen, and you should have.
The only view now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for including me in this space tonight. I actually wasn't sure if Oscar was going to include much about our childhood together, our shared childhood. So I thought I would go a little bit more into that. I have known your beloved Professor Sita since we were the tender age of 14 as high school students at El Dorado High School in Las Vegas, if any of you have heard of that. It was one of the original, like, OG high schools in all of the Las Vegas Valley. I trust that he has actually said very little to you about his high school escapades. And so if you play the Zoom chat game right, you can ask any question you want me to answer. If you do it really quick, you don't know, it might slip by him. He might delete your question before I see it. So, play the game right. I want to see that Zoom chat hopping like the comments section of a viral TikTok video. After graduating from El Dorado High School in the late 20th century, I started out as a music major in college, and I ended up finishing college with a science degree. I landed my first job actually in the business world, so like music to science to business, all in the span of 4 years, which is probably typical for many undergrads. But the business world actually turned out to be a really fertile ground for my entrepreneurial soul, and I've now spent half my life as a business owner. And I offer my services as a public speaker and a public speaking coach, primarily in for-profit spaces. In my entire career, I've worked with an estimated 6,000 public speakers to help them improve their skills. Some of them are aspiring, and some of them have been actual working, gigging public speakers. But that's just my formal experience with verbal communication and talking informally. I talk with people all day long. They talk with me. My day is full of communication. And I've noticed that in these 25 years of my career that some norms around spoken communication have absolutely improved. For instance, when I first started in this work, there wasn't really much of a demand for a speaker to be authentic to their audience, but now it is almost a requirement for an audience to be able to connect with a speaker and therefore connect really well to their message. But I've also noticed that over the same 25 years, the standards for verbal communication on the whole have kind of deteriorated. I think we're getting a little sloppy. And some verbal sloppiness is the result of all of these social media platforms that we have access to. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not demonizing social media platforms. I love the democratization of platform that social media has afforded us. Anybody can download the Instagram app and go live, right? Anybody can create a Facebook reel and have it go viral, TikTok, what have you. Um, Everyone, however, can grab that microphone and shout really loud into it. The challenge is that not everyone really has anything worth saying. And so the world just gets really, really, really loud. Also, I think that some of the sloppiness in our verbal communication as a culture, as a society, points me directly to early COVID when a world in lockdown found us desperate to make human connection. And since it wasn't safe, we didn't feel safe at the time being in person, we found each other in Zoom rooms all over. It was nice at first to gather virtually, and then it just became a habit to show up in these rooms and for people to just talk and talk and talk without a goal, without an agenda, without a purpose. And here we are, 5, almost 6 years post-COVID, and I find myself sitting in many meetings where the volume of words that is said is magnanimous and there is scant meaning to be found. You got to really pick through the rubble to figure out what people are trying to say, and I really don't like it. So, as Oscar said, I published a book in August. It's called Tiny Talks, Big Impact, A Guide to Short Speeches for Busy People. This is a collection of my best advice that I've collected over my entire career for any business professional who isn't a professional speaker that wants to put together a short form presentation, which I define as a 5 to 10 minute talk that really works. It really connects with people and it communicates clearly. Your beloved Professor Sita made the astute observation when he began reading the book that I dedicated the book to my son, Louis, and that the book actually reads like I wrote it for him. And that makes me feel good because all of that is true. So I explained to him, and I want to explain to you now, that the dedication that I originally wrote was actually a lot longer than just for Louis. The original dedication read, "To my 22-year-old, for the 22-year-old I once was, and for every 22-year-old who's figuring out how to use their voice to navigate this big, bad world." So, in essence, when he invited me to do this talk, I thought, wow, I think I wrote this book for all the people that are going to be attending this talk. The person finishing a professional degree that's going to define who they're going to be in this next phase of their life and stepping out in the world to see how they fit into it. So in the book, if you choose to get it, and I know I should be better at selling it, but really what I say is if you think you need it, get it. It'll probably help you. And if you don't, no worries, right? But the book covers the nuts and the bolts of how to put together that simple and effective talk. That's the job of the book. My job tonight, though, is to convince you that your best tool to make change for yourself, for your clients, and for the world at large is your voice. And I have specific ideas I want to share with you tonight about how you can capture and develop your professional voice, refine your professional voice, and use your voice to get the work done that you care most about. So, Oscar, I think I'm going to go ahead and just like pause. There's like three sections where it kind of makes sense. So I'm going to jump into this first one, and then at the end of it, I'll pause and we'll check the chat and see how that's going.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. I believe that the seeds of your voice are already growing. Even if you are a very young 18, 19, 20-year-old right now, the seeds of your voice are already growing. I started college as a music performance major, and even after I changed my major, I stayed. I remained a member of the university orchestra all 4 years. I played a lot of fun and very challenging pieces. And the orchestra conductor told my private teacher right before. Now, mind you, I was 20 years old. My employment experience up to that point included Blockbuster Video, a very famous water park in Las Vegas that is now defunct, and a sporting goods store. So these were hardly professional jobs. I also never spoke with the orchestra conductor very much outside of rehearsal. Really, all of our communication was about what was happening in rehearsal. I had maybe two conversations with him outside of the notes that he would give me in rehearsal. And those two conversations outside must have been very brief because I know he was always busy. And yet, for 4 years, he noticed that I attended every rehearsal on time. I was always prepared. He noticed that I tried my hardest. I didn't complain. I was never a distraction for others in the room. And I listened to his feedback to improve how I was performing my parts. I was consistent and reliable. All of these qualities together, he gave the label professional. So I didn't even need to say much to him to communicate my professionalism. He innately understood what I now realize he would have called my voice. In 2025, we might call voice a personal brand, but for now, for tonight's talk, I just want to keep referring to this quality of who we are and how we show up as our voice. So, said another way, our voice is verbal, but our voice is also written. Our voice is in the way that we groom ourselves and dress ourselves. Our voice is how we carry ourselves and how we treat other people. So we can let the evolution of our voice happen organically over time. That happens, right? Or we can decide what we want our voice to be and start making intentional changes to move toward that voice that we are looking for faster. So I think that some questions worth asking ourselves about our voice now is what does your how would others describe your voice right now? And what does your voice suggest about you? How
Yeah,
does
so
your,
that's a good
sorry, go
question
ahead.
for the group. If you guys want to put your responses in the chat, and then we have something to respond to. Go ahead.
Love that. How does your voice currently set expectations for people who don't know you? And then conversely, how does your voice set expectations for people who do know you? Do they think they know you better than they already do? Do they think they can predict what you're going to say or do based on what they believe they know about your voice? And what, if anything, would you like to change about your voice? So, yeah, let's go ahead and pause there and hear what's going on.
Yeah, take some time to answer those questions, one or all of them,
Mhm.
or pick one that you like the most. That'd be nice so we can get a good conversation going. And as Antoinette's talking about her music career, and she was and still is a tremendous musician. I think it's important to say that I think I learned to develop my voice in high school because Antoinette, we're in band together, we're in choir together, and then I
Mhm.
started to understand the nuances of my voice through music, the different ways you could project emotion or strength or sensitivity. And so as you're talking, Antoinette, I'm thinking I learned all these things, and then when I became a therapist. Since I was so attuned to the dynamics of music, I could use those to demonstrate understanding with my patients. Like when I needed to pause, because a big part of music is silence, and when I needed to, make my voice a little bit more tender and less commanding, and to show that that really, and I've noticed that a lot of young therapists kind of talk with like a set tone, or they kind of do the TV therapist voice, which comes off as kind of insincere. And so it's important to have an authentic voice as well.
Thank you for that. I want to call on a couple of things that I'm seeing in the chat. First of all, a throwdown about I can't imagine Dr. Sita as a teen, and then he answers with a photo of himself as a teen. So you got to scroll the chat for that one if you want to see it. Mariah says the better connections happen in person than online. You know, it's interesting as a presenter because when we went into Zoom, I had all of my in-person events canceled through the end of 2020, and some of them moved into Zoom and others did not. I've definitely found that it is possible to make good connections in Zoom, and a lot of it resides on the energy level and intensity of like in a two-person conversation, both people. They have to really be there and listening and watching and paying attention. And you can make really effective connections in Zoom. In my experience, it takes a lot more energy and focus and just energy and intensity to do that. I agree generally, though. I think in person, the connections are easier and faster, sometimes stronger as well.
So looking at some comments here, and you can
Mhm.
respond to them, Antoinette.
Sure.
Brandon says, I I try for my voice to be comforting. I share a message of recovery and hope, and I hope people hear the Christ in me.
Mm.
And Sherman says, my voice has given me lots of strength to overcome my addiction, and now I can't wait to be able to help others to be strong. So, just to give you some background, our human services program focuses on counseling and addiction treatment, um, and so a lot it draws a lot of folks from the recovery community who have decided they want to give back, take the time and effort to become a professional counselor, and then upon graduation, apply for licensure in the state.
Mhm.
Brittany says, Brittany, there's a Brittany Ostler in here. So in our high school history, there was how many Ostlers were there? There's three
I think
sisters.
there were six in the family,
There,
but what's
there,
weird is I just saw Susan's something came across on my Facebook last night.
so
She was signing.
every time I'm grading Brittany's assignments, I always think of the Ostler
Of
sisters
course you do.
from high
Of
school, and I
course you
always
do.
think I wanted to ask, like, well, it can't be possible they're related, so I never wanted to ask. But
Drop it in
Brittany says, I
chat,
think
Brittany.
others would describe my voice as empathetic and validating. I wish I could change the way sometimes use my voice, like using the correct words and not using too many words.
Mm-hmm. Mm, love that.
And Maria says, I think people would describe my voice based on who you're asking.
Yeah.
My family might say I'm loud, decisive, and pathetic. A stranger might describe me as timid and shy. I'd like to be confident and strong while keeping a friendly voice.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and there's a few more questions here. Yosel says, if we're in our early 30s, but with a young heart, we're still okay to plant seeds, right? LOL.
Plant lots of seeds.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this is, Oscar and I are like you, right? We're not spring chickens anymore. I genuinely know that the opportunity is there for all of us at any age to continue to grow and to continue to just improve and make the changes that we want to choose for ourselves in our lives. So absolutely, 100%.
Okay. And Keaton says, hello, Antoinette. Your voice makes me feel comfortable and that you are knowledgeable and thoughtful.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, Keaton. I mean, that's part of the deal, right? Part of the deal. Part of the work that I do. It's why I get paid the big bucks. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And one last comment, and I'll let you continue or to respond. Nakona says, um, as a mom, my voice dictates the whole mood of our home most of the time. I try to meet them with understanding.
Mhm.
Um, And Star says, although being sociable does make me feel content and want to go on with the conversation, I
Mhm.
would say my voice has both extremes, pretty small, too quiet, high pitched, and other way too loud, low,
Mhm.
assertive speaker. I wish to balance them in a way to show confidence, humility, warmth, and welcoming, hearable and understandable to the ears,
Mhm.
the human ear. Exactly the message and perspective I'm meant to share. I'm better speaking with the keyboard in comparison to speaking to actual people. Okay.
All right.
Thank you for that, Star.
I'll make a quick comment that I think actually addresses a few of these remarks. When we talk about our voice, there is the quality of the voice, and then there's the how we show up in the world voice that we present, most of the time. It makes a lot of sense that the quality of voice that we use can change situationally. So, if you are a therapist in session with a client, I can imagine that the quality of your voice that you're talking about is going to take on specific tones, right? Maybe specific volumes and inflections and that kind of thing. Similarly, if you were, on the other hand, like going out to a big rally and you were speaking behind the microphone and there's a great big crowd that you're getting pumped up, you're probably going to have a very different tone of voice to be appropriate for that crowd as well. All of them can be aspects of who we are. And so again, when I talk about like, what is your professional voice? It doesn't always mean what's the quality of your voice as much as who are you and how do you show up in there? What is your professional voice? So one of the ways though that we can start to shape that voice is by paying super close attention to feedback, which is the second section that I'm going to go ahead and move on to right now. Let's talk about feedback. I find personally that current pop wisdom is giving us a lot of advice on feedback. One of the things that I see a lot on memes is if they don't love you at your worst, they don't deserve you at your best. And I do agree with some of this. The term fair weather friend, if you've ever heard that, refers to the kind of friend that's only there to share your very best moments, but when you need them to lean on, they disappear. If they aren't present for our toughest moments in life, then I agree. Maybe they don't need to be present when we celebrate our best moments in life.
Isn't that
However,
Thoreau? Isn't that
what's that?
Thoreau? Isn't that Thoreau?
Is it?
I think it
You
is.
please Google that.
Antoinette. I think you were in advanced AP English, I'm sure. So,
I was, but I don't remember that as thorough. Please Google it and don't use
I,
the AI overview to give me an answer.
okay.
I want a real citation for that one. Um, However, that same phrase, if they don't love you at your worst, they don't deserve you at their best, at your best, it doesn't absolve us from being good humans. It doesn't mean that we get to be irrational or unreasonable or abusive and that others should just take it. When someone loves us enough to give us feedback that feels true to them, and they think we need to hear it to become better people, the last thing that I think we should do is cancel their friendship. So, feedback has been defined in many ways, but the most useful definition that I've heard is feedback is any information that we get about ourselves. And the funny thing is that when you think about it that way, we get feedback all day long. Our coffee barista smiles at us in the morning, that is feedback. We cut off a car when we're driving in traffic and another driver honks at us, that is feedback. We get a research paper back from our professor Sita with a grade on it. That is feedback, right? So I guarantee that every time we talk, whether it's a formal or an informal talk, we're probably getting feedback whether we want it or not. It might be a facial expression in a casual conversation. It might be written feedback on an evaluation if it's a formal talk. So we can't dismiss all the feedback that we get, and I would argue that we don't want to, unless we're committed to living life the hard way, unless we're committed to not growing, and then I guess we can ignore feedback at our own peril. I believe that if we are committed to growing and learning, then we have to become students of feedback, and we have to start asking ourselves much more critical questions like these. What feedback did I get today? I would recommend if you've never done this before, you sit down and you go through your entire day from start to finish and you make a list of every time that you remember getting feedback from someone. And remember, it could be a look, it could be a honk on the road, it could be something that you said and somebody said, responded to you, oh, I'm surprised by that. That's feedback, right? And then once you have this list of feedback in one typical day, then you can ask, what feedback did I respond to? And what did I ignore? And am I consistently ignoring feedback from specific people or about specific projects or different things that are going on in my life?
Yeah, so I'm hearing Antoinette saying just to to take more stock and awareness into the feedback you're getting rather than just kind of glossing it over as a regular conversation or
Mhm.
just you know,
Yeah.
banter at the office, but to really think about what's happening because a lot of times we don't have the conscious awareness of taking the time to see if that's consistent, if it's
Mhm.
there's similar themes coming through, which can be
Mhm.
really useful
That's right.
because it feedback is becomes a mirror.
Mhm.
It helps. It's just like when you're getting ready in the morning, you need a mirror
Mhm.
to look at yourself. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I like that analogy. Well, similar to what you just said, I would also suggest that we ask ourselves, what patterns do I see in the good feedback that I've gotten before? Who consistently gives me good, high quality feedback, and who consistently offers me feedback that is proven to be trash in the end, just a big old heap of garbage, right? And why do I think it's trash, or what evidence do I have that it's trash feedback? For me, I think one of the questions that I asked that really helped me grow fast was who's earned the right to give me feedback? Who should be giving me feedback and yet is not? And why? Have I created feedback-free zones around myself where I've made it clear that I don't want to hear anybody else's opinion, right? So should I ask for feedback from specific people? Um, I see a lot of stuff in the chat. I wouldn't say I'm ready to take the comments yet. However, I have a lot to say after this. So why don't we just pause really quick? What's happening in the chat?
I found a quote by Thoreau, which is not exactly fair weather from, but it's close.
Oh,
And then some comments, just basically on what you're kind of mentioning, but nothing,
cool.
no specific questions.
No specific questions. Okay, good. Let me push forward then. We'll finish this section and then maybe we'll open up and have some conversation. I really am a big fan. I tell people all the time that I think we need to work on our relationship with feedback. And we need to learn how to sort through all of the noise and isolate the valuable signals that indicate that there is change worth making behind it.
Hmm.
I think the sooner that we can crack the feedback code, the faster that we're going to be able to choose the change and get the results that we want. I've given so many talks in the past 25 years. Some of them have been formal presentations in front of thousands of people with a specific lighting crew and a sound and AV group and multiple camera angles, capturing my words and making them immortal, which is ridiculous. I've also given some really informal pep talks lasting 2 or 3 minutes long, just trying to offer up some shred of hope to people in a very dark time. And I've gotten a lot of feedback. In fact, when Oscar and I were kids, we grew up playing music, as we've mentioned. And through band, choir, orchestra, we learned a lot of sonatas and concertos and symphonies, participated in a lot of competitions, and we got a lot of feedback. For me personally, I would see on my jury sheets a lot of comments about how I was technically gifted, which was a bit of a backhanded compliment that kind of suggested that while I got all of the notes right, there was not a lot of emotional expression that folks could find in my performances. And I thought I was pouring my heart out on stage, but there were enough folks in some of those audiences that agreed that I might be impressive technically, but I couldn't really move them yet emotionally. So that was one area that I definitely worked on as a musician. And as you know, I found myself going on to a science degree and then to a career in the business world. So 10 years after that, funny enough, I started to see the same type of feedback show up on my evaluations as a facilitator. And in fact, it didn't happen often, but just 3 years ago, someone wrote on one of my evaluations, she was so perfect, she was almost like a robot. And it did not strike me as a piece of positive feedback. I take most feedback to heart, and I really sat with this one for a few weeks, and I asked myself, how is it that in my head it's constant chaos all the time, but what people see appears to be so perfect and polished that it seems inhuman? I thought that I was taming the chaos and filtering through it for the benefit of my people, but maybe what I need to do is actually filter less. So in the past 3 years, I have been adjusting that filter, and I feel like I have reached the perfect nexus of intentional, authentic, prepared, and human. And my current feedback forms really do reflect this. I feel like I've leveled up again in my ability to communicate with others. Occasionally, though, I admit to you, sometimes I think my style resides on the border of what one might label unhinged. But I think this is one example of the potential of great feedback when we learn from it and choose to make positive change. Um, and I guess finally, the last thing that I want to say on this is I get formal feedback all the time on my voice as part of my job, and I get feedback on my everyday voice that I use in conversation. I was explaining one time the requirements of a certification program to a gentleman, and later he came back to me and he said, I didn't appreciate earlier how you called me out. And what I thought was a standard unemotional explanation of a certification program, to me, it came across as like a personal attack to him. I was really surprised. Maybe he felt like the requirements that I was sharing with him highlighted shortcomings that he felt in himself,
Mhm.
or maybe that I was spotlighting things that he had not done yet. He took a simple program description as a personal insult. And so that was feedback for me that maybe I could soften my words or warm up my tone when I talk about the program. On the flip side, I also realized that I had presented these same program requirements to thousands of people. And there was only one person in all that time who had a problem with it. So I started thinking that maybe the person that needed to consider change was him and not me. Maybe there was a level of sensitivity baked into that for him, where my tone wasn't inappropriate at all, right? Because I've done the work of creating a process for filtering and accepting feedback, I felt pretty confident about my choice not to change my tone in this case. And I really did feel like it was more a reflection of how he was taking the information than how I was delivering it. So, surrounded by good, high quality feedback, I know that we will move faster toward our desired outcomes. We will have more tools to help shape our professional voice, but we do have to put the work in of critically thinking through the feedback and parsing each bit that we get with purpose and deciding which change ultimately we want to choose for ourselves. I believe that this ability to choose change for ourselves is so powerful. This is in many ways the heart of what I think all of us in this room do for a living, which is helping people to choose change for themselves, right? So if you embrace feedback not as an unfortunate consequence of being human, but as a pathway to growth, I think you're going to go so, so far.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're really putting a fine point on the importance of it. And I wouldn't say growing a thick skin, but not internalizing the feedback as an insult, but as a means for you to. I think this is why the relationship with coaches and really dedicated athletes, whether it's at the high school level or college or professional, because they know that feedback is useful
Mhm.
and they don't internalize it. They use it like you mentioned as a tool. In the field of mental health and in health sciences in general, the professional roles, whether it's nursing, radiology, mental health counseling, or behavioral health or wellness, uh, we're all under supervision for a lengthy amount of time. I would say at least 2 years. It's like residency for doctors. And during that time, aside from making sure that you're ethical, that you're using best practices and you're competent, the supervisor is giving you feedback on your delivery of interventions, your even your paperwork, your diagnostic acumen, and this is not a fun time. Um, but through the programs, this helps prepare you for it. So we get so used to the feedback that it becomes second nature and expect an expectation, especially when you're working kind of from this psychological perspective. We have parts of ourselves that are unknown to us, and without feedback, we cannot become aware of them. It's essential. So.
I see a lot of good stuff in the chat, just kind of validating the value of feedback for growth, right? Um, yeah. Is this Yosel? Is that how you pronounce it? I love how you share your weakness. I hope you keep working on it. I have a lot of weaknesses. I think we all do. I'm not super shy about talking about it either. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the business of growth, right? Like as a public speaker, as a facilitator. I'm always trying to help facilitate other people's decisions and actions toward change. And oftentimes for me in the for-profit world, it's how am I going to change my business? How am I going to change um, my work with my team and become a better leader, right? So yeah, I think it all goes better when we can really face down what's really happening. Without feedback, we wouldn't grow. That's right. Let's see. Okay, Keaton, what qualifications ideally should a person have for you to receive their feedback as valid and valuable?
That's a good.
So let me see if I can make sure I understand that. Keaton, are you asking what does someone have to do for their feedback to be valid and valuable to us?
Keaton, I'm going to unmute you so you can speak because that's a big question.
Yeah, it's hi, how are you?
Hi.
So it's kind of like a tricky question. I guess when I was saying it, I was just thinking, really, what did I mean by it? But
Hmm.
I often get feedback and I try to like assess the person, like to receive them.
Yeah.
Who are they as a person? And I'm not sure if that should always, especially in regards to patterns,
Mhm.
when you're hearing the same thing for all different types of personality, you could still
Yeah.
consider it.
Yeah.
But um, like I said, with different people giving you feedback,
Hmm.
you have to look at who they are, like
Hmm.
what qualifies them, whether professionally or personally. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. For me personally, here's a smattering of some of the things that I would consider. Again, who is this person in relation to me? Do they have an agenda for giving me this feedback? And I'm not saying that in a strictly negative way. When I say agenda, are they a coach that I'm paying that's trying to help me get better, right? That's an agenda they might have is like, oh, this is my client and I have to help this person get better, right? Um, but do they have an agenda for that? Do they have a vested interest in the decision that I make based on this feedback? Those are probably like a couple of the most direct things that I would consider. I feel like on the other side of this, though, Keaton, is this thing that you've kind of alluded to, which is sometimes we will get feedback from someone who doesn't really have qualifications, and yet they have hit at the heart of something that we know we need to change. It may be that it's one more voice echoing feedback we've heard before that indicates that we need to change, right? So there's a lot of factors in that. And actually, I'm going to say one more thing about feedback that's kind of related, and I'm not a fan of the internet feedback. And what I'm trying to say is, if there's a chance for someone to give anonymous feedback, I find that very often they will fall to the most negative phrasing. It'll come across as a personal attack when people don't have to take responsibility for the feedback that they're giving. And so I tend to not really pay much attention to anonymous feedback unless it does kind of cut to the heart of something that in my heart I know is true. So all of that said, I think there are a lot of things that you could consider. What I would recommend for you is that you start trying to figure out for yourself what those qualifications are, if you will. How does somebody's feedback rank higher in your list of priorities versus not? One of the best things that I ever did when I was in I think I was late 30s, I assembled for myself what I called my personal board of directors. That was a nickname I gave them. It was a group of about 6 women who I knew I could count on to help me make the biggest decisions that I needed to make in life. And there was one time where we were literally assembled around my dining room table. And I remember thinking to myself, this is my personal board of directors. And so I think about, what would someone have to do to be on that board of directors? And that helps me sometimes to decide how to prioritize that specific feedback. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm kind
Mhm.
of summarizing what I'm here to clarify that it sounds like trusted feedback,
Mhm.
feedback from a trusted source, and whatever
Mhm.
that means to you, because it can
Mhm.
be really personal on how we decide to trust people. And I think,
Thank you.
and
That's a
I
great way to
agree.
summarize it.
Yeah, I agree that sometimes the worst people will give us the best feedback. So, because they don't
Sometimes,
care about
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And that's and sometimes the people that love you the most will give you useless feedback.
Hmm. Mhm.
because you need somebody to be critical and not worry about hurting your feelings.
Mhm.
And that's why I currently supervise 14 interns. I am not friends with them, and I let them know we are never going to be friends. We might be colleagues after you complete your internship, and we do work closely together, so there's a professional relationship there. But I know that if we had kind of more friendly ties, that it would contaminate the relationship, and it wouldn't be as useful to them because I wouldn't be able to, um, you know, be as helpful.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we good to move on? All right. Rounding the corner to home base, friends. I think this is really where I kind of landed on this whole topic of voice. I think our voice is like the most powerful tool that we have in our toolbox that doesn't cost any money at all to use. A few years into my journey to improve my public speaking skills, I had picked through at that point mountains of feedback, and I had really started to create a process for myself in how to separate the signal from the noise. I was already making very specific changes to my public speaking style, and as I got better, so did the feedback. And that ended up building confidence in myself, right? I know that seems kind of weird, but my ability to be able to take all the feedback, filter through it, and then pick what I was going to do to change, and then watching how that change propelled me forward just built my confidence. And I think that these two qualities, a good public speaking ability and high confidence, it reads in the US like leadership. And I think you've probably experienced this before. You've watched a stranger walk into a room, they present an idea or an opinion in a confident, articulate manner, and then you think, wow, this person is absolutely leadership material. However, we would still know very little or maybe even nothing about this potential leader's values, morals, or ethics, and we could have no clue whether who they presented themselves to be to us publicly is who they really are behind closed doors. And maybe, in fact, you are a person that people assume to be a confident leader because you do speak clearly and confidently already. That's great. I remember a turning point in my life where my confidence level was getting really high. I would be just a random shopper at Target, and other shoppers would start flocking to me to ask me for help. Not because I looked like an employee, not because I was wearing a red shirt, but because my vibe and my energy was, I know things. I'm just telling you, it happened. It still happens to me. I think that the vibe and the energy that we give off when we reach that sort of level of confidence and being well spoken is that we know stuff and people can read it on us in the way that we end up moving through the world. I mentioned earlier that I've coached some 6,000 public speakers in my career. And by far, the most common question that I get asked in my workshops is how to get rid of bad public speaking habits. And it's usually along the lines of saying too much or using some other filler word when there's a pause, when they should just pause. Sometimes I think that people also fear accidentally cursing in front of a formal audience. So they kind of lump all of these questions and how do I get rid of my bad public speaking tics? That's usually what people ask me. And I think that sometimes they imagine I'm going to tell them the solution is to wire themselves with a buzzer and hand a remote control to a helper that's going to send them a shock every time they say or they let a profanity slip through in their presentation. What I tell them actually is that our habits in everyday conversation can become magnified or multiplied from the stage. And that kind of makes sense, right? When we get nervous, we start to do things more and faster. So if we say a fair bit in our everyday conversations, we're going to rely on when we pause in the middle of a big talk. If we speak like a sailor in everyday conversation, guess what we're probably going to do when we feel nervous? We're going to curse like a sailor when someone's recording our speech and live streaming it to YouTube for the world to watch. So, the person that we want to be on the formal stage is the person that we should be every day in all of our conversations. We want to practice using our voice all the time, not just in front of specific groups of people. We want to be the best us all the time. We want to be the same person that we are in front of an audience than we are behind the stage. When the voice that we use for special occasions is the voice that we use for everything else, we're going to find an alignment that allows us to not just seem authentic when we're on stage, we will literally be completely authentic. And people won't be able to tell the difference between you on the stage and the you that they talked with backstage because it will be the same person. This level of authenticity is a much valued, it's a very rare leadership attribute. And it's the third piece of this leadership trifecta. So we have the confidence, we have the clarity, and we have the authenticity. All three of those are really magical. It gets a lot of work done in this world. So even if you have no leadership title, people will follow you when you have this alignment of confidence, clarity, and authenticity. People will want to connect with you because you're real. They'll want to follow you. And at that point, you will really be able to exercise the full power of your voice, not just to change yourself, but to change the world. So we're almost at the end. Let me just go ahead and finish, and then we'll take all the questions. I just want to do a quick summary of the main points. You know, your voice is your power, but mainly right now, it is one of the biggest opportunities in front of you. Just remember you can curate your own voice, and by listening to good, high quality feedback, particularly from people that you trust and know have your best intentions at heart, they'll help you choose change for yourself. And once you really refine that voice and you combine that confidence and clarity with a level of authenticity so that who you are on stage is the same as who you are behind the scenes, you will be so powerful. You will be able to make any change that you want for the world. So that's a real big tool in your change maker toolbox. I'm really grateful that you stayed this far into the talk through all of our boomer Zoom issues. Really, really grateful for the work that you are training to do and that you're committing to right now, and everything that Oscar has told me about you, that you're fun, friendly, open, compassionate, idealistic. It gives me a lot of hope for the future. And to whatever degree that I am able to support you in improving your skills, refining and fully empowering your own voice, I feel very invested in your success because if you succeed, then this world gets better. And let me tell you, right now, in this year of our Lord 2025, all the clues are pointing to the fact that this world needs to get better. So thank you again, Oscar, for inviting me tonight. I'm not sure if I covered every point that we needed to, so let's just go ahead and open up the chat, see what comes up.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I do appreciate you sharing your inspiration with my folks. The students are amazing. We hear all the problems in different programs, but I don't see those problems. I see really compassionate folks that really demonstrate their commitment to the field because they put in the work, and our program is a lot harder. We don't have that many students. We've got about 29 bachelors and I want to say 36 in our associates program and various certificates. And my dean's always asking me, how come you don't have more students? And I'm like, because not everybody has the wherewithal to become a counselor and care about, and it takes a special kind of person. Before I get too far into it, I want to give everyone the passphrase for tonight. This is what you need to put into your assignments for credit for attending the talk. So it's gobble, gobble, gobble. So you just, I'm going to put it in the chat. So it's gobble, gobble, gobble. You shouldn't forget that. Just put that in your assignment, submit it. You get the points. You don't have to do anything else. The folks who weren't here tonight have to watch the video and then present a paper. So it's a lot. Right, going into Thanksgiving, you guys got a nice break from some extra assignments. And with that, I'll give it back to Antoinette and the floor to the questions from the chat. Any questions for Antoinette about what we talked about, her experience as an author, as a public speaker, as a trainer? This is your chance because me and probably most of you can't afford her as and to be honest, if I were to ask somebody who wasn't my friend, I would have to pay them some kind of per diem that would be astronomical, and the accounting folks would tell me no. So I hope you guys appreciate the time and energy, Antoinette. And she's on the road, right? Aren't you right now? And she's doing a lot. She's doing a lot of thing. I know she's in you're in you're on
I'm in Florida right now. I'm
yeah.
in Boca Raton. I facilitated a workshop earlier today. I had a little book signing that was very nice,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, now I'm here with you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you could be here. Not just because we're friends, but we watched each other grow over the years, and
Mm.
it's a nice reflection point in our lives.
Aw. I'm scanning the chat, and it's all full of sweetness and gratitude, which I echo back to you.
Oh, they asked what instrument you play.
I played flute and piccolo. And I mean, I played as an adult too in like some semi-amateur, semi-pro groups in the Austin area, which is where I'm from, where I live now. I have not played in several years though, so it's been a while for me. How about you, Oscar?
Well, I started out in middle school playing the alto saxophone, and then
Yeah.
I switched over to French horn, which I played throughout. And I did play in college for a little while when I could. And then when I got into my graduate program, I had to give it up because it was either make rehearsals on Tuesday and Wednesday nights or go to school. So I thought, well, am I going to be a professional musician or a professional counselor? So I had to make that. Now, still, music is a big part of my life in lots of ways. It's a very personal thing to me. I like to sing, and I'm not a very good dancer, but I like to dance when I'm alone. And and I think that's good enough. But yeah, and it's a source of comfort for me. So whatever it is for you to find, especially working with patients, it can be very taxing sometimes, and having those outlets is invaluable.
Okay. I see a question in here from Emily. I want to work with kids and I feel like people laugh because of my wheelchair. How do I make my voice louder? Can we hear more on this?
Yeah, let me find Emily really quick, and I'll unmute her so she can speak.
Okay.
Go for it, Emily.
Antoinette, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I want to be a play therapist,
Mhm,
and I get a lot of, how are you going to do that?
mhm,
Are you positive that this is a career field that you want to do? And I have to shut those questions down a lot.
mhm,
And so I want to know, how can I shut them down in a more productive way?
mhm. Can I ask you to tell me how you're shutting them now that you feel is not as productive?
I just say that, you know, I have great teachers
Mhm,
and great friends along the way,
mhm,
and I'll figure it out. And
mhm,
they just kind of give me this look like, well, you're crazy and
mm,
you're gonna fail. And when you do, don't say I told you so.
mhm. Wow. That's a great question. So, it's funny. I mentioned Oscar and I had gone to El Dorado High School. I would say that out of all of the schools at the time, there were like 10 or 12 high schools in Las Vegas. It was one of the ones where we were always underestimated. And you can't see me in person. I'm not a large person by any means. And my entire life and career, I have always, always, always been underestimated. I think that there's a lot of choices that you probably have, Emily, in this. Um, One of them is if you're going to be that sort of quiet underdog person that succeeds, meaning you just kind of keep all of everybody else's doubts at bay and you just have a polite script that you say every time. Like maybe you lead with, "Hi, I'm Emily and I'm studying to be a play therapist." And before you ask, "Yes, I'm ready. Yes, I'm sure. And I'm going to be amazing," right? And you just start off that way. Um, that's one way to do this. You could just not really address it at all and just do it and show them in your results. I think this is a choice that you get to make of how you're going to show up in this way and how you're going to do this work and maybe prove the doubters wrong. Um, I've noticed in my life, by the way, and there was another gentleman, he's also a touring public speaker from the Chicago area. He grew up in, the hood in Southside Chicago, and he is a large black man, and he was telling me that folks tend to make a lot of assumptions about him up front too, about what he's capable of and how effective he can be at the front of the room. He and I had a good conversation one time about how sometimes being the underdog or being the one that's underestimated, we can respond very differently to those forces. And I know that for me personally, I tend to not be I'm going to prove you wrong as much as I'm going to do what I'm here to do. It doesn't matter to me what you think about my abilities or how I'm going to do it. I'm focused on the work. This gentleman had shared that for him, it was absolutely about proving other people wrong. So I don't know that I know all of your motivations. I would just say it's worth you kind of considering what kind of performance you're going to give in this. Are you going to give the I'll show you performance? Are you going to give the private, I'm doing it for me performance? Are you going to give the I'm doing it for the kids? Like I think you get to choose in this.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Emily.
Yeah.
And I would address not just to Emily, but to everyone. Um, if you're trying to prove people wrong, you might spend too much energy that you don't have left over for the journey. So it takes a tremendous amount of effort to become a therapist. It takes years, and years of dedication, training, and on top of that, not everybody's going to like you. There's a lot of people who don't like me. You'd be surprised because I think I'm pretty likable. But in the community, and for lots of different reasons. One, because I challenge the board of examiners on issues. I've made our program kind of stand out in the academics settings in Nevada, and that has gotten me, I guess, either some fear of competition or something like that. But I just think we're rising tides, whatever the saying is about boats, and and so, but have had to take it, and just be like, I'm not here for that. I go back to I'm here for my students, and I had a bad week. I don't know if the faculty, students know this, but I'm a faculty chair, so I'm always in and out of it with the administration and changing policies and all the kinds of things that go into that. And I was like, man, I hate this part of the job. And then I started grading because like the end of the semester's coming and the students are like, lighting fires under me to make sure I get the grades in. And I thought, and reading their assignments and grading them, it always grounds me. And I'm like, this is why I do what I do because they're the source of my inspiration, my motivation because I see the passion, the level that they're at, their dreams and their aspirations. Some are working in the field, some are getting into the field, some are getting licensed, some are already licensed. This is so cool. And I think because when I started teaching and I didn't really want to teach, I realized that I couldn't work with enough clients, but if I could train enough students to become good therapists, then that would be kind of a bigger impact. And that's what I went to. I don't have a huge client load anymore, but I think finding, and Antoinette and I were talking about this when we were discussing what the talk was going to be about, is finding what enlivens and the passion impassions you to do and get done whatever you need to get done. And it should always have the balm, and I mean balm like a healing sense, like a cream that you put the balm of love on it. So whether if it's resentment or anger or um, I don't know, revenge, that's going to leave you empty once you reach the goal. But if you've done it for some whatever compassion and love, that will um, make your experience that much more expansive. And I think that's important because I some people do it for the wrong reasons, and then at the end of the day, they're like, I did all this for nothing, and for me, it wasn't for me.
Mhm.
I was going to show my parents. I was going to show my old professors. I
Mhm.
want to show my ex-wife. Or I was never married, but somebody was. So with that, I'll give it back to Anthony.
I don't know that I have much to add. I think that's a great summary. And in fact, I was remembering that that gentleman I was telling you about, he did come back to me and say, I feel sometimes like I spend too much energy on proving other people wrong. He did say that. And it's a habit that he was working to break as well, like a reflexive feeling that he was working on trying to overcome. So yeah, Emily, I think you're going to do great. You're going to do great. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I did see someone wrote, I'm so glad we were here for the reunion. Band nerd reunion. Um,
And choir nerds. So,
and choir. That's right. Again, thank you all so much for having me in your space. You've been really fun. And thank you, Oscar, for
okay.
inviting me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Antoinette. Good night.
Okay.
If you guys want to hang on just a second, I wanted to remind you the passphrase again is gobble, gobble, gobble for Thanksgiving. Just put that into, I know a lot of folks are kind of coming in and out because I think somebody's connections are coming. I just want to make sure nobody missed that. Thank you guys all. Somebody said, God bless you. Thank God bless you. I tell you, we have so much work this semester. I've never felt so behind. So, thank you guys for being patient with me. And Dr. Wentz, we've got tremendous amounts of responsibility. There's only two of us, and there's like hundreds of you guys. But rest assured that you're getting a curated, high quality education through our programs, and this is proof of it. Our contacts, Dr. Wentz and I have, varied contacts in the community. Of course, I leaned on my friendship because I thought it was an important topic for you guys to get exposed to because we all are going to be public speakers in some sense, and it's not just with clients. Sometimes we're going to have to present a program they want to develop. Maybe it's a homeless shelter or a food bank or something in the community that you're going to need some convincing, and you're going to know how to use your voice, not to just encourage people, but to really get them to see your side of the story and help you. Because we know in these small communities where a lot of us live in Nevada, not me personally, but I know many of my students do. Um, there's a limited amount of money, and your personality, your character, and your integrity are the most important things you can have in this world. And if you take that with you as you're going to be successful wherever you go. So thank you again for everyone attending tonight and being so gracious to our special guest, my dear friend. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Good night.